Hey guys, right, I'm just going to quickly go over how to generate the cat rig necessary for your animations. It shouldn't take too long. I am going to be using 3ds Max with the default sort of orbit settings and things like that. You should be familiar with these now. You should also be getting familiar with the hotkeys. W for move, E for rotate, R for scale, etc. And also, just general 3ds Max functionality. First things first, I'm just gonna customize my units if you haven't done so already. So I'm setting mine to metric now. You can change to meters, centimeters, millimeters. Probably wouldn't use kilometers. For the video game stuff, I would recommend using centimeters, largely because a lot of items you might be creating, certainly for map props and things like that, if you need more fine measuring and things, you're going to be looking at getting those measurements correct, especially if it's something that's requires quite a fine degree of precision, etc. So I'm going to ignore the lighting units and everything. I'm going to set this to centimeters and just hit OK. First things first, as I did in the session, I'm just going to generate a box like so. I'm going to click on the box and go up to the modifier tab up here, and I'm going to put in 100, 100 by and 100, so that allows me then to have a 1 meter by 1 meter square block. I'm going to hold shift, use W to duplicate that, and I'm just going to set these values again, but I'm going to bring them down to 75. So 175 is a pretty sort of pretty decent sort of height for a character. It's like 5'11", just short of 6 foot, something like that. It's something. I mean, scaling characters and stuff like that can be done in game, but it's better to kind of not have to worry about that and get these sorts of scale fixes, or get the scale right before getting it into Game Engine, because that's just another thing to have to deal with, making sure that the scale's correct. If you have a lot of items in the scene where the scales might be different, it can affect performance with certain game engines. You'll have to forgive me still, I'm full of cold as well, so little bit poor on the old sort of audio front. Okay, I'm just going to move this so that I've roughly got, so like the height. What I can do though is I can use snap, and I can use vert to vert snap. So to use vert to vert snap, really handy for snapping items together. If you go up to your snaps toggle up here, hit right click, you get a series of items here that you can tick, and vertex is one of them. I'm just going to close that, and with that now selected, I can drag that edge, that vert to that vert, and it snaps it in place. Don't need to do much more with these. I'm using S to turn the snap on and off, but we don't need to do much more with these. It's just a case now of getting a cat rig in there to match the scale loosely. So with the cat rig, we go to create, helpers, you've got a drop down list here. I'm going to hit cat objects and cat parent. In here you've got a whole host of sort of things you can use. I have got with me, what I will be using is the base human, and I'm just going to drag that in so that it roughly matches the height of what I have there. I'm going to keep these in the scene for now, I'm just going to hide them. Okay, so with the cat rig created, first thing to do, make sure that the cat rig gets centered. So if you hit 0, 0, and default for your Z should be 0 there as well. That's now all centered, and we can start going in and editing the cat rig. So we're going to go with something that resembles a T-pose for our cat rig. Not a full sort of T-pose, but the reason the T-pose exists is because if you have a character model and you've modelled it so that the arms are quite close to the torso. Well, there's two things that are going to be problems down the line. First thing, if you have, if you're sculpting, of course, there's going to be issues with tools affecting faces that it shouldn't be affecting, etc. If you're then taking the sculpt data and trying to bake things like normal maps and ambient occlusion, you're going to get projection from the torso onto the arm, and you're going to get projection from the arm onto the torso, and you're going to end up with some really nasty sort of artifacting going on the textures. So that's kind of like 1.5 reasons, I guess. The second reason is if you then go to skin this with your character's arm there, well, when you move a bone up, you're going to have your envelopes in here. You're going to have the arm affecting the torso, possibly the torso affecting the arm as well, and it's just going to make for a really messy job to try and go in and fix the skinning on your mesh. So I'm just going to break these apart. Well, I say break these apart, just bring these arms away from the torso. I'm only going to do one side because you can copy data across, but I'm just going to move that to a point where I'm happy with it. Yep, that's fine by me. Just going to do it the same, whoops, with the feet slightly. Just rotate them slightly, and I'm just going to rotate the thigh as well so that it matches the angle of the foot, because if I have if I have the foot helper rotated, the knee still kind of follows its own rotation, so I'm just going to ever so slightly tweak that so it matches the foot, like so, and then when we bend the leg, yeah, it bends in the same sort of orientation as the foot helper. That's pretty much the leg done. I am going to just sort of like slightly bring the character up here a little bit, so we give him perhaps just slightly taller legs. Just tweak that slightly. Longer legs, not taller legs. Oops, come on. Nah, I'm going to bring that down again. I'll just edit undo all of that. Just going to make him a tiny bit taller, but yeah, that's fine. So, with the leg done, I'm just going to copy the data across. So copy limb settings here with the thigh selected. Basically anything that you copy here will affect any of the children to that mesh. What I am going to do though is I'm going to add a foot. In fact, I'll do the hands first and then I'll not a foot, a toe. I'll do the hands first and then I'll add the toe. So I'm happy with the angle of the arms. I'm just going to rotate the palm a little bit, and then I'm going to move that, and I'm still happy with how that bends and everything works and functions largely how I want it to. So that's fine by me. I am going to select the palm bone, and there's no fingers at the moment. This is because we have the number of digits set to 0. I'm just going to hit 5 because we need 5 digits, and that gives us 4 fingers and a thumb. I'm not happy with the scale of the fingers at the minute because obviously you've got your little finger, which should be little. You have your ring finger, which should be a little bit longer, your middle finger, your longest finger, and your index being sort of the same sort of length as your ring finger. To adjust the length here, you can go in and scale these up. You can go in and move, but I'm going to just go in and adjust the length using the actual bone settings itself. So looking at my own hand, my middle finger's about this sort of length in relation to my palm. My ring finger's tiny bit shorter, so I'm going to leave that as is. My little finger's a bit shorter still. Just going to tweak that, bring it down, and I'm just going to shorten the index finger ever so slightly as well. Okay. Just going to tweak the length a tiny bit more actually. A lot of this is just fine tuning. It shouldn't take too long. It's not a very difficult task. It's just a case of going in and tweaking the values that need to be tweaked. I'm fairly happy with that for now. It's not perfect, it's not ideal, however it will get the job done for what we need it to do. So in order to sort of get the fingers in a state where they're good to model to, or they're good to rig, I'm just going to do the same with what I did with the arms and the feet, or well, the legs, and I'm just going to splay the fingers a little bit. I'm going to move the fingers too, just so that we get a better sort of shape. And to get this, I'm just double clicking on the parent bone, and that selects all of the children. Now, I do have the rotation gizmo matching the actual pivot of the bone that I'm trying to move. To get this effect yourself, because otherwise I think the default is view, obviously that's affecting multiple axes at once. Don't want that to happen. I am going to select local, and that will match the pivot of the bone that I'm trying to rotate. So with these selected, I'm just going to ever so slightly bend the fingers. This isn't absolutely necessary, but when modelling hands I tend to add a little bit of a bend to the hands, as it's better to pick up on, certainly when doing the sculpt, it's better to pick up on any areas that might need a little bit more geometry, you know, areas like the knuckles, nails and things like that. The finger looking, you know, like it's in a more natural position certainly helps with getting the sculpt done. So I have that hand mostly done. The default thumbs on these are not good. They are way off how a thumb actually works. I am just going to rotate the thumb like so, because human thumbs, so with some animals as well, they're opposable, so they're not going to be folding on the same sort of axis as what your fingers are. So it's just a case of taking the thumb. The thumb's a really important one, but it's a case of taking the thumb and making sure that everything that you're tweaking with the thumb kind of works, so that if you go in and bend these fingers, it looks and feels natural. Might be worthwhile having a picture of a hand up, or certainly referencing your own hand when approaching this. Okay, and again, it's just fine tuning, tweaking, going in and making sure that things are behaving how you want them to behave. So, just going to move the thumb in there a little bit, because the base of the bone of the thumb is a little bit longer. I'm going to splay that a tiny bit as well, so that when you're modelling the hand, you can capture the sort of the stretchy skin between the finger and the thumb. With that done, I'm happy with that hand. I am actually just going to tweak that a tiny bit. I am going to go into the foot and add a digit for the toes. Now, you don't necessarily want all of the toes to have their own bone. Even if you've got like even if the historical character you'll be working on is a sandaled character, I would still just have one digit. So this works really well for boots and things like that. Now there are two bones here to kind of simulate the fact that, you know, there's a toe joint in there. I'm not wanting two bones with that, so I'm going to select the parent of the toe, and I'm just going to select number of bones and put that down to 1. So that just gives me a block, and this blocks what you're going to be sort of like getting your sort of step shape, you know, so as the, you know, as your foot lands or as you're trying to run and set off and stuff, that's, you know, the ball of the foot, that's your that's what you're looking to simulate. Just edit, undo all that. So I'm going to copy the limb settings here. Now, really easy to do, so it saves me having to do everything on that side. If I just hit copy limb settings there, click there, then paste / mirror, not paste limb settings. I'll show you what that does in a moment. Paste and mirror, that copies the settings for that whole limb over to that limb. I'm going to do the same here, so copy that. Now if I click paste limb settings, it's going to take all of this data and not mirror any of it. So I have 2 left arms, effectively. This is handy if your character has more than 2 arms on each side. Obviously we're doing realistic characters, so that isn't anything that we need to worry about. I suppose if you're doing things like insects and things like that, that will again be useful. It's probably a more sort of realistic approach. So I've copied the limb settings. I'm just going to paste and mirror those limb settings, and now I have a cat rig that I'm happy with. Now I am just going to check the scale of this. It's pretty much where I want it to be, so I'm going to get rid of the boxes, and now this is a customized cat rig. This is the one you'll be using for your animation. To animate, we are going to go to motion. This is one that people trip up on quite a lot. We have something here called layer manager. There's a little option here called add layer, and we're going to hit ABS there, and hitting N. If we go in and auto key, which is the N function, if we go in auto key, nothing's going to happen. That's because the animation layer that we have isn't recording. So if we hit green, your little biped guy lights up there. If we then move on and rotate stuff, we then start capturing data. So yeah, hopefully this was of use. This is how to get your cat rig ready for animation. And on Thursday I will be looking over any animations that people have started, and probably looking at some nice little tips in the way of getting animations sort of like more refined, and a few little shortcuts which should help along the line as well. So that's about it for the cat rig. It is absolutely worth noting now that we have the animation layer active. We cannot move bones using the W tool. Well, we can do, but it's not ideal. I tend to animate using just rotation, as it's a little bit kinder on everything else that's going on within the scene. And yeah, that's it. On Thursday's lecture we'll be looking at topology, which should be a little bit more fun. So hope that helps, and I'll see you soon.